Hey guys, and welcome to my channel and to this video. Today we will be painting this beautiful feather in just two colors, and we will also be using salt. So without further ado, let's get to it. I will be using this Centenaire watercolor paper. It is 100% cotton, cold press watercolor paper, 300 GSM or 140 pounds, 18 by 26 centimeters or 7 by 10 and 1/4 of an inch. Of course, you can use any watercolor paper you have. That is fine, whether it's a cotton or cellulose, that's just fine. All I wanted to do for my sketch is just this line how my feather is going to be centered, because it will make it easier for me later on when I start to add the paint to decide where to put it and how to place it. So just do that line for the center of your feather, and that will be enough for the sketch. Then I've picked up a lot of water in my brush, splattered some water here and there, and then on top of it picked up a little bit of the blue. That's something similar to ultramarine blue, something like that, I would say. And then splattered some paint on top of the water I have already added, and with the tip of my brush I'm just pressing it in, tapping it in, and just creating different textures. You can see that there are some parts with a little bit more of the paint and some parts a little bit less. And also I have skipped some parts. I haven't painted one even wash, but just added paint here and there. And also right now I'm just adding a little bit more of the paint to the parts where I do want. You see how some parts are going to be dark, and I do want them to be the darkest near to the center of the feather. So going outwards, the paint will be a little bit lighter. Just tapping in with the tip of my brush, creating textures. And these paints, these are my paints that I made myself. They are a little bit grainy, so they will leave beautiful textures. But even if your paint is not grainy, that's also fine. It will create beautiful textures using the technique I'm just showing you right now. So you can see how the outer edges are a little bit lighter, and inside part where the center is a little bit darker. Right now I have picked up some salt. This is just a regular table salt, nothing special. And I'm splattering on top of my paints. And I do want to splatter it everywhere on that part that I've painted blue, because I do want a lot of textures from the salt. And you will see the textures will be subtle. That also depends. A lot of you have been asking me, why is not my salt working? I'm putting salt on top of my paint. It just doesn't work. Well, maybe it's due to the paint. Some pigments just don't react to the salt. And you know, I've noticed that when I use some of the colors and some of the pigments, the salt just gives a huge impact, and when using some others it just doesn't. So maybe you just want to do a light washes of the colors you have, and then on top splatter some of the salt just to see the reaction and how the effect will be. But also it depends a lot on the amount of water that you have on your paper and the paper itself. So everything is just, different, and sometimes it's something just looks perfect when I use same paints, same paper, same salt, and the effect is stunning, and sometimes it just doesn't work. I'm not sure why that happens. I guess a lot of factors are there. So just don't be discouraged if you use some of the paints and notice that it doesn't work. That's fine, because sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't. My advice to you is just to try to put washes on top of your paper with a little bit less and a little bit more water, just to see the difference. That is how you will learn, and that is how you will actually see the difference in amount of water also. And now I have mixed this warm yellow, again from my collection of colors, Cozy Set, and this coffee brown, to create that beautiful, I guess that's something like I would say something like a maybe raw sienna, something similar to that. And just doing the lines for my feathers. And you can see that I have also done them a little bit thicker where the center of the feather is, and a little bit thinner going outwards. I'm using this Lebenzon brush. I do like to use that brush for very tiny and thin lines, and just going downwards a little bit with those colors. And since the paint is still wet, it is bleeding into my blue. That's what I wanted. I like that. So just a little bit more of the paint, again going down. And you could have seen that I've also added that mix of blues, actually blue, that I used for the lower part. I also added to the top and putting it in onto my, I guess, that yellowish brown color. A little bit more of the feathers lined for those little feathers. And that part I won't paint the entire way. And you can see also that there are some parts that there is still water sitting on my paper from the splatters I did from the beginning, and that's very nice. I did do that because I did want those splatters to actually create later on some light washes when I start to add this paint. And later on, then when they dry, they will just give a beautiful looser effect to that upper part. It won't be too tight. So if you do have splatters there, if your paint is bleeding, that's fine. We do want that for a little bit of the looseness. Just a little bit more of that brown, a little bit more of the yellow, and a little bit more of the blue I have mixed in. And just gonna go on top again of those lines, and sometimes I'm pressing a little bit harder to make them slightly thicker, and sometimes a little bit lighter to make them lighter. And also I'm going into the part where the blue is with that brown. I do want those colors to mix. I don't want the upper part to be brown and the lower part to be blue. So a little bit of the splatters with that brownish color, and also with that, now that that's gray because I have mixed some blues and browns, so it is a grayish color. And also when you add splatters, it will just also move the pigment on your paper. So again, creating beautiful textures, and this feather is actually all about creating beautiful textures. So let yourself loose. A little bit of the black. And I'm gonna go on the central part of the feather. Just add that black to give it some shadows and a little bit more of the texture to that central part. Later on, when this dries and when we remove the salt, we will be adding a little bit more of the details there, but for now that's enough. So just a little bit more. And you can see that I'm using a very, very light wash of the color. And I'm looking, I do want to add a little bit more of the salt. It's starting to pull away. Some of it had already melted in my paint, so I'm adding just a little bit more of the salt. And now I will add just a tiny bit of the blue in the upper part. I was looking at it, it was looking too pale to me, so I decided to add a little bit more of the blue. And after that, I will just leave it to dry completely. Now that it has dried, I will remove the salt. And you can see how beautiful those textures that salt created. They are a little bit more subtle, not very visible, but they are there. Now I will mix in a little bit more of the blue with black, and just to create this beautiful, rich, darker color. And Again, with this Lebenzon brush, I will do a little bit more of the details to my feather, and I do want to make it a very, very light wash. So I'm watering down my paint and just adding some details to the lower part of the feather. Again, doing the same lines as I did in the upper part, but I'm not going to do all of them. I don't want too many lines, just a few of them to give the impression, a hint that there are some, I guess those, not sure what they are, but small little feathers, the parts of the feather. So just adding a little bit more, and when I have already added very light wash, I'm just topping it a little bit more of the paint. And you don't have to do all of them from the center. They can be also out of the borders of a feather, not even touching the center. Again, as I said, we do want to make it loose, so don't be too bothered and, with the perfectionism, or, well, this is not a realism in no way, so just enjoy adding those details where you see fit. I'm just looking whether or not I want to add something else. And again, picking up a little bit more of the paint, of that blue, a little bit more of the black. And I'm just thinking where I want to add a little bit more of the details. So when the paint starts to dry, it will be a lot lighter. So just nearest to the center, I do want that part to be slightly darker. So I'm adding a little bit more of the pigment there, but you can see I do have this one white spot. I do love that, so I'm not gonna go and paint on top of it. I do want to leave it there. It just gives some light to my feather, and I really do like that. I got right now this flat brush from ZenArt supplies and art brushes, and it has a little bit harder bristles, so I like to use it to pick up the paint. And I'm just going on top of my feather where I want to add a little bit more of the light. So I'm picking up the paint. You can see how it just moves the paint and create those white lighter spots. So just to give it a little bit more of the texture, I'm picking up some of the paint. Also on the other side, maybe you want to smooth some edges, and you can do that also with a little bit stiffer brush and just a tiny bit of the water in it. And you can see how it just immediately added a lot more texture to our feather. Like that, just a little bit more in some spots. And I'm not pressing hard, just a light gentle touch with the tip of my bristles. We don't want to rip the paper, so a lighter touch. And I don't even have a lot of water in my brush, just enough for it to make it slightly wet, and it's not dripping from my brush, just a tiny bit so we can move the paint. And I'm just looking where I want to add a little bit more of that light, like that. You see how it just, you can use a white gouache for this also, but I do like it because I can easily lift paint from this paper, and this paint, it also lifts easily, so I did not want to use white gouache. I just picked up the paint. A little bit more of the splatters with blue. And I'm gonna also do a couple of splatters with black. It just gives I don't know, some elegancy and depth to my painting. So a couple of splatters with black. And there you go. Again, just looking where I want to add just a tiny bit more of the details. You can just correct everything in your painting right now and see where you want to add a little bit more pigment, where you want to take away a little bit of pigment, where you want to add some light, and where you want to add some depth with a darker paint. And there you go. I really do like that, how it looks right now. And also I will add a little bit more of the brown and just a touch of that blue to the upper part, and just to distinct some of those feathers, lines. They're all just meshed and blend together right now when they're dry, and I do want to add a little bit more of the diversity to that upper part also, so I'm just adding a little bit of the darker pigment there. And with this, I'm definitely done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I did a real time for you. It was a short one, so I thought it would be fun for us to hang out a little bit together. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button, share it, and comment. That would mean a lot to me. And if you haven't still, please do subscribe to my channel. That would be super awesome. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time. Bye!